All right, today we're talking with seven-time best-selling author and CEO of self-publishing school, Chandler Bolt. Welcome to the show, Chandler. You're not a military guy, which is great because I've got a lot of veterans that come on the show that have written books. Every veteran's got a book inside of them that's just dying to get out. So this is very applicable to the veteran community, the military spouse community, our audience. But before we get started, I'd like for you to go back and tell us about your journey to entrepreneurship and ultimately how you ended up starting self-publishing school.
Yeah. I grew up in South Carolina. I'm a college dropout and a C-level English student with ADHD. So kind of the last person you'd ever think to write a book, but probably very similar to a lot of people listening here is, just grew up and got to a point where, I went to college and realized that I'm learning how to run a business from professors who have never ran businesses. And that didn't make too much sense. So I decided to drop out. But right about the time that I did, I wrote and published my first book. And that's where I think probably similar to people watching or listening is, I felt like I've got these things that I've learned that I want to share with other people. And a book is one of the best mechanisms to do that. Now, I'm intimidated by writing a book, but I truly feel that this will kind of memorialize a lot of the things that I wanted to teach and that I wanted to share. And so that's what ultimately doing that and writing a couple books, those did well. That sparked self-publishing school. And then fast forward to today, and we're one of the fastest growing companies in the US. That helped me land on the Forbes 30 under 30 list. Like we've published over 6,000 books in the last 7 years since inception. And specific to this community, I mean, we've had a decent amount of folks from the military write books, and whether that's helping people through PTSD, whether that's women in the military. I'm trying to think, it's hard to remember 6,000 books, but I'm trying to think off the top of my head. And I know at a minimum, we've had several books that have made an impact.
So the first book you wrote, you kind of did it on your own and just struggled through the process cold and probably didn't have a whole lot of help doing it.
Yeah, exactly. And then realized people started asking me, hey, how are you doing this? And I realized, oh, wow, there's a whole lot of people that struggle just like I did and that could use some help getting it done. Yes. But then also marketing it well so that it can grow their business.
I have military authors and military spouse authors on the show from time to time. I try to keep the book deal interviews to a minimum, but I started allowing some of them to come on the show because I really don't want to hear about, honestly, I don't want to really hear about what their book's about. I want to hear about their struggle that they went through to actually pull off writing the book, the promotion of the book and the selling of the book, because that's the entrepreneurial struggle that every business has to overcome. And so we spend a lot of time talking with authors about the struggle of how they learned it, how they figured it out. You actually pulled off writing a book, and then what? And then what'd you do? And most of the people that I've interviewed, they kind of did it on their own. They really didn't have anybody like you guys helping them. So it makes me think, if they had gone to self-publishing school from the get-go, how would things have been different for them?
Yeah, that's our hope. And that's our goal is because I think about it in a few buckets. It's like, how do we save people hundreds of hours in the process? Because it can be a very long time consuming process. Then how do we save them hundreds, if not thousands of dollars in the process? And then thirdly, though, how do we help people write a better book that sells more copies and is intentionally grows your business? And so that's the goal. That's why I created the company. And those are kind of the ways that we measure our success with our students of how can we do those things better.
So one question, this has come up many times, having interviewed lots of authors. Some people write books just to help make them an authority in their niche. They really don't plan on making any money at all, if at all, on the actual physical book. But every time they go to a speaking engagement, they've got their book. Every time they go somewhere, they got their book. They can promote their book, and it creates them as an authority in that space, which gives them validity, and people trust them as an authority. And so how often can you talk a little bit about, like, is your motivation when you're talking with somebody that wants to write a book, or are you trying to make money off the book? Or are you just trying to become an authority in your space to help promote the business? You talk about the differences.
Yeah. So I look at this and kind of there's I call it the 4 whys. It's the 4 reasons why to write a book. And I think it's important, and I talk about this in the new book, but I think it's important not only that we get super clear on the why for our authors, but also, the why for our readers, but also the why for us as authors.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people get clear on what the book, how the book will help the reader, but they don't get clear on why they're writing the book for themselves. And that piece is really important. So I look at, there's kind of 4 whys. It's a passion project, like bucket list, legacy type thing. Second one is shared experience, which this is, maybe it's of starting your business, of losing weight, of which going through some struggle. And this is where I think a lot of military-based books fit in, is like, it's a shared experience book a lot of times. Then there's third, which is I want to be a full-time author. Then the fourth is I want to grow my business. Now, sure, you could overlap a lot of these,
sure,
right? But that, I think it's important to get clear on that first, because then a lot of the decisions that you make down the road will be really, they'll be easier because you first decided that. And then that's where we see some of the you can see the differences too in some of the books that have been written, military-based books. You got some that are more nonfiction, and like I had, Leif Babin, co-author of Extreme Ownership, on Self-Publishing School Pocket. Like that's very much like, okay, we wrote that book to teach leadership principles. We're using military experience, and then the end goal is really to grow their consulting business.
Sure.
Right? And so you can get super clear on that from the start, and that'll help you write a better book, and that book to be more intentional to fulfilling the goals you have as the author.
So nothing wrong with creating a book solely to be a promotional tool for your current business. Nothing wrong, or any of the others.
Yeah, no, nothing wrong with that at all. I'd say just make sure that you write a great book.
Right.
I think some people they'll choose that path, and then it's just a glorified pamphlet or advertising for their business, and it's not going to fulfill the goals that you have. If that's the path that you take, write a great book that truly teaches something that's meaningful, and your business is going to grow. Right now, there's a bunch of tactical things I can teach on how do you structure it so that you go from readers to subscribers, or readers to paying customers. But really, the core is get clear on, I call it the 4 Ps: person, pain, promise, price. This is the 4 Ps of a best-selling book. So who's the person that you're writing this to? What's the pain that they have that they know that they have? And what's the promise that you're making through this book? Right? The price piece is kind of straightforward, depending on the format, but getting super clear on that up front, like I said, will help you write a better book that truly grows your business.
Now, does one of those 4 reasons for writing a book, do you find one of those, some of them tend to be way more successful than the others?
Yeah, I mean, shared experience books do really well. And you can write a shared experience book because it's a passion project or to grow your business. I mean, certainly, but I think if someone's like, hey, I want to make $1 million tomorrow from this book, and that's their goal, that typically doesn't go well, because they'll cut corners and just won't write a great book. And they're just so busy trying to move fast that they're not playing the long game with that book. But shared experience, I mean, people want to learn from other people who are 2 steps ahead of them. And it's almost this fallacy, right? It's like if someone's 100 steps ahead of me, cool, I might learn some stuff, but that's not the most helpful people to learn from, in my opinion. And so I always look for people that are 2 to 5 steps ahead of me and say, hey, they're close enough that they still remember what they did, what it was like, and what I should do, versus so far removed that they're like, oh yeah, I ask someone on my team, or I don't even know that I'm so far past that I don't think about that, and I'm not familiar with those problems and challenges currently.
Yeah, you hit on something like the basis for this podcast is people ask me like, yeah, you famous on your show? And I'm like, I mean, yeah, if somebody famous came to me or introduced me, then yeah, I'd be glad to have him on, but I don't pursue famous people. And the reason why is because most people, somebody in the military or just getting out, they might not be able to relate to Robert Kiyosaki or somebody else that's a 50-year-old multimillionaire, and they've been in the military for 20, 30 years. Like somebody that just got out a couple of years ago and they're hitting it and they're doing it, they can relate to that. Like they can see being that person. So it just works to have more common folks that are just, like I said, just a couple steps ahead of the people getting out. They can relate to it. 100 steps ahead, it becomes unrelatable.
I agree.
Yeah. So at what point after you published your first book or two, you must have, people start coming to you asking you questions about how you pulled it off. When did the light bulb come on that, hey, maybe I could create a business around this, the fact that I know how to self-publish?
That's a great question. I think this is very applicable to anyone coming out of the military and thinking, hey, what next? And how do I figure out where to specialize my skill sets? Because I mean, it's totally different, but there is some overlap. Is I dropped out of college and I'm thinking, okay, what I knew I wanted to start a business, but I didn't know what business. And so that I was kind of in a similar spot where it's trying to figure out what to do. It's a big transition, right? And trying to figure out what to do next. And so I started a business that was just failing, trying to solve a problem that people didn't care about. And meanwhile, people, like you said, they just kept asking over and over and over again, hey, you're doing this book thing. How are you doing it? How are you doing it? How are you doing it? And I get on the phone for an hour just to be a nice person for free, teach them a lot of stuff that I knew and whatever I could kind of jam into that hour and say, hey, good luck. Hope this helps. And just kept doing that. And then finally it's, this feeling of you can only get smacked in the face so many times before you turn around and look, and you turn around and look, and there's a whole line of people that want help with that thing. And so that was a light bulb moment for me where I finally said, oh, hold up. I'm doing this for free just to be nice, but I should start charging for this. Mm-hmm. And this business that I'm working on is totally failing. People are obviously interested in that. So we did the first cohort of self-publishing school, signed up 44 people, I think. Over 60% of them wrote and published a book in less than 6 months.
Wow, that's great.
That was crazy for me. Yeah. And then I realized, okay, this works. I can now passionately get behind this. And so that would be my advice or recommendation for anyone who's kind of on that in between and they're in that transition period, trying to figure out what's next is what are the things that people are actively reaching out to you about? What are the questions, like the things that is like, you're kind of the go-to person for your friends, for your family, for other people in the military, or for people in your life as a whole. And then that's a really great topic to write a book on, first and foremost, but it's also a very great topic or area that you can go into business and you can get your first paying customers because people are already actively seeking out a solution for that problem.
Absolutely. Well, hold that thought. We're gonna take a quick break. Be right back. All right, back talking with 7-time best-selling author and CEO of Self-Publishing School, Chandler Bolt. So Chandler, let's get down to brass tacks. How do you get the book published?
Yeah, so I look at this. So the end-to-end process is, I try to break this down into milestones. So there's 8 milestones to go from blank page to published. And then I'll zoom in specifically on the writing a little bit because I think that's where a lot of people get stuck. So you can kind of see here, so we've got mind map, outline, rough draft, self-editing, editing, cover design, formatting, and then launch, right? And so the first 4 encapsulate what I call the MORE writing method. So MORE is an acronym. It stands for mind map, outline, rough draft, editing. All right. And the biggest kind of roadblock that I see for people when they're trying to get started is first off, how do I get my first 1,000 words to the page? But then bigger than that is how do I get my rough draft done? And so what I would encourage everyone listening or watching is to take 15 minutes as soon as this podcast interview is over, grab a blank sheet of paper, write your book topic in the middle of the page, set a timer for 15 minutes, and write out everything that you can think of on that topic. So basically start creating your mind map. And I think what you'll find and what a lot of people find is that there's a whole lot more that you can talk about and write about than you think. And so think about the ideas, the broken record conversations, the stories that you have, just like so many of those things you could put in this book. And that's a really great starting point. And then you create an outline from that rough draft, use that outline. You create an outline from that mind map, use that outline to write the rough draft, and you'll be off to the races in that process. Yeah.
So I would imagine a lot of people, without hearing something like that, a lot of people like they open up a notebook or open up Microsoft Word and they just, okay, now I'm going to write my book. But you can't really write it in book form unless you're a phenomenal writer already, I suppose. But most of us just spew random things, and then you
Yes,
spend time sorting and reorganizing and getting it all together where it makes chronological sense.
no doubt. And that's where the mind map outline rough draft process was really, really helpful, because you've got a roadmap, right? You use that mind map to inform, maybe you got 5 groups of ideas. That's the 5 sections for your book. Drill down 3 chapters per section. Now you've got a 15 chapter outline or roadmap that you can use to write the book 1 chapter at a time.
Uh-huh.
Right? And so that just makes the whole process much easier, because it feels like you've got kind of a GPS or a
Sure.
follow.
Okay. So if somebody's interested in getting started with you, where do they go and what do they do?
Yeah. So the first step for a lot of people is booking a call with my team. You can go, there's a link at self-publishingschool.com/apply. You can book a call with the team at that page, but so the purpose of that call is to get clear on your book idea, your goals for your book, and kind of your next steps. And so start to put together an action plan. And then that's where we say, hey, are you fit? Are you not to work with us at Self-Publishing School? If so, that's when we can, jumpstart the process and help people through that process. And then it moves into, we'll pair them up with a coach that will work with them one-on-one. We've got curriculum that they can follow. We've got a bunch of tools that make the process easier, but it starts with putting together that plan. A dream without a plan is a wish.
Sure.
And we're not about wishes. We're about getting books done.
Absolutely.
and helping people do that. So that's kind of the process.
So, I mean, explaining to a newbie how to write a book is probably part of the process, but there's probably a lot of accountability built into the process. Also, having somebody that will hold you accountable to get that book done.
Yeah, I look at it kind of like a mix between Indiana Jones and Jillian Michaels. So Indiana Jones, we blaze the trail and we show people how to do it, save hundreds of hours, hundreds if not thousands of dollars, and then actually get it done, right? And then Jillian Michaels, we hold people accountable. And so that's the big part of I think why people pay us money is sure, we do a good amount of the stuff. Like we'll help get the book formatted, uploaded to Amazon, book cover, like we'll do a bunch of that stuff in kind of the production phase, but really we help people hold people accountable to move forward throughout the process, which I think is what people find really helpful.
Yeah. You mentioned somebody gets assigned a coach. Is there like a mastermind process and weekly meetings and what are some of the other mechanisms with your process to help people make it through and get done with their book?
Yeah, it's a lot of it's a lot of accountability mechanisms. And so there's the coach assignment, there's a mastermind community as well. There's group coaching calls. So 5 days a week, we have multiple group coaching calls. People can hop into a Zoom room, just like we're recording this today, and get specific help and feedback from their coach or from one of our coaches. And so there's a bunch of stuff like that. And then we also we're pretty diligent about tracking on the back end to see where people are at in the process and how long have they been in those phases. And then we'll proactively call people and say, hey, looks like you've been stuck on your rough draft for 60 days. Like, how's it going? How can we help? What are next steps? Let's get you plugged back in. And we've got half-day virtual, like write your book workshops, a bunch of stuff like that to just, how do we make the process simpler, easier, and help people make progress? And so it's a lot of the accountability mechanisms that, I think are somewhat similar to the military. I'm a bit like a very disciplined, like regimented person. And so, and a lot of the things I learned from Student Painters, which was an organization I worked for in college, is they're teaching 18 to 20 somethings how to run a painting business. And to do that at scale, you have to be just very systematic, disciplined, regimented, all that stuff. And so we try to incorporate that into the elements of what we teach, so that we can help people make consistent progress.
Yeah. So I'm sure anybody that's listening to this is wondering, what's it going to cost? How's the pricing work?
Yeah. So we're an education company. We're not a publisher. So basically, there's some advantages. There's just some disadvantages of that. So basically we charge up front, and then we help people go through the process. The advantage of that is we don't take any of the royalties, right? So people keep 100% of their royalties. So a lot of our competitors are in the, you've got traditional publishing companies, you've got hybrid publishing companies. They're in the tens of thousands of dollars range. For us, it's typically about 6 to 10 is how much people would pay us. Now that also includes services that they would pay for anyway. So like formatting, cover design, upload, stuff like that. But that's typically the pricing structure. And then our goal is to save them hundreds of hours, hundreds, if not thousands of dollars, and then to sell more books and grow their business. So that's kind of how we ROI positive for our authors.
And is promote once the book's done, is promoting and selling and the social media aspects of the promotion all part of the plan, all part of the process?
Yeah. And so there's a lot of stuff we teach. There's some of those things that we do for people, like creating social media images and stuff like that. The big thing I would really want to emphasize here, though, is no matter your publishing path, you as the author are responsible for marketing your book.
Yeah.
It's a common misconception. People think, oh, I'm going to traditionally publish. My publisher will market my book. No, they're not going to, right? And so no matter what, you are responsible for marketing that book. So we have a lot of curriculum that helps with this. We try to focus people's efforts. We also do some of this stuff for people to help, but really that should be the wind at your back, or as my mom said growing up, it's the gravy, not the main dish. And so our goal is to help people and to supplement what they're doing. But at the end of the day, you as the author are responsible for the marketing of that book.
Awesome. Okay. Well, if somebody's interested in getting started, how do they find Self-Publishing School?
Yeah, two options here. So first is, you've heard me talking about this book. This is the brand new book that I just released. It's called Published: The Proven Path from Blank Page to 10,000 Copies Sold. Really great book. It'll help you from wherever you're at to getting your book done, selling more copies, all that good stuff. You can find it on Amazon. You can find it on Audible. I narrate the audiobook there. Also, what I'd love to do is for listeners of this podcast, I'm going to give away 50 physical copies. Yes, for free, no strings attached. So we'll ship them. All you got to do is just let us know where to ship it. So go to the URL. It's called publishedbook.com/Joe. So published, like I published a book.com/Joe. Like I said, just fill out the form. Let us know where to ship it. There's no shipping and handling, nothing like that. So that's probably the first and best place for most people. And then, that'll get you started, help you through the process, kind of a 10,000 foot view of what we teach. And then if you're thinking, hey, I'd love to work with you guys at Self-Publishing School, just go to self-publishingschool.com/apply, book a call with the team. We'd be happy to chat with you about your book.
Yeah. And if you're driving down the road, listen to this, we'll put the publishedbook.com/Joe. We'll get that in the show notes for you so you can bring it up later on. No need to drive off the side of the road. That's awesome. Well, we're getting close to the end of our time. So when you held up your book again there.
Yes, sir.
I don't know, if just another reminder for everybody listening. I do put the full video version on our YouTube channel, vetteronthemove.com, on the YouTube channel, if you want to see the stuff he's holding up at the cover of his book. So from blank page to 10,000 copies sold. I wanted to ask, like, what are when people publish a book, like in the publishing world, what are some of the key sales goals? Like if you publish a book and you hit 100, yeah, that's awesome. Or is it 1,000 or is it 10,000? Like, what are some of those key metrics in like the percentage of books that ever sell more than, 100,000? Or do you know some of those numbers off the top of your head?
Yeah, it's kind of like, so in the traditional publishing world, kind of 10,000 copies week one is that's huge. You're going to hit some form of list. Okay. And that is a very, very, that's a great goal. For, self-published, traditional published, et cetera, still 10,000 copies in your first year. That's very solid. The average self-published book sells less than 100 copies, which is just so sad. So our goal is to change that and get that to 1,000 plus or thousands. But that's kind of the difference in what success looks like.
Yeah. Kind of sounds like podcasts. Like most podcasts never make it past like episode 6 or 7.
And then you got your unicorns that just have millions of downloads and that sort of thing.
Yep. Awesome. All right. Well, we're about out of time. Chandler, I do want to give you the last word. So you're talking to somebody that's in the military, they're on their way out. They've got this phenomenal, story or idea in their head. They really would like to publish a book someday, but they really just have no idea where to get started. What kind of advice comes to mind?
Yeah, it would be, my biggest piece of advice would be, there's never going to be a perfect time to write a book. I know for a lot of people, writing a book, it's on the maybe someday list. It's on the maybe next year list.
Yep.
You're going to have to get started before you're ready. And it really can be one of the most just beneficial, helpful. If you're looking to make an impact, to grow your income and to grow your business or start your business, it's one of the best things that you can do, in my opinion. And you're creating what I call leveraged impact. You're crystallizing your knowledge into a book that can impact tens of thousands, maybe even millions of people, right? And so it's worthwhile work. It's not easy, but it is simple if you have a process to follow. And I would encourage people to put that down, because the experiences that you've had, I mean, it are just so unbelievable and can teach and help so many people. And I think the best way to do it is a book, but you gotta make it a priority, and you got to get started before you're ready.
Absolutely. All right. Great advice, Chandler. Thanks for sharing your entrepreneurial success story with everybody. We look forward to seeing your future success, and check back in with us in a year or so, see how you're doing.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Joe. Love the work you're doing.
All right. Appreciate it. All right. We are Oscar Mike.